I am baffled. I am thankful. I am belittled. I'm bewildered. I am very thankful for the reception of Whatever Forever episode 1. Um I just don't really even know what to say other than thank you, because that for me was the start of something that I want to continue to do more, not only just this year but going forward, and that is to just be honest with myself and be open with myself. I know that you guys see my channel name, which is 11 is okay. And, for the most part, a lot of my online friends or people that I've met online call me 11. But I feel like I'm so caught up in that I forget that I'm not just 11, the alias of 11, but I am Alex, and that is my name, right? I am Alex. And sometimes it's easy for me to forget that, dude, you're not just, what you are online, you're also a person offline. And for me, for someone who has been trying to do and has been doing content creation for so long, and making videos, streaming, etc., I have at times, forgotten that there's more to this than that, right? And so I think that moving forward, I really just want to be open. And if I could relate, have people make things easier for people, and just give someone a quick minute to laugh or just enjoy themselves, then I want to continue doing that, for myself and hopefully for others. And if you guys enjoyed the last episode, thank you. I promise that I will be continuing on with this series, because again, this year and now more than ever and going forward, I want to just be honest and open with, previous instances and previous shit that I've experienced, because hopefully, I know that some of these experiences are not just unique to me, and I just want to, hopefully make you and hopefully tell you that everything will be okay. And let's just be fucking honest with ourselves, because I feel like at times we're just not. And we owe it to ourselves to be honest with ourselves, because at the end of the day, if we don't love ourselves, how the fuck are we going to go on about trying to do the same for others? But anyways, in the last episode, I talked about what it was for me to be a teenager. I didn't really delve into it too much, but I really want to delve into it in this episode, because my teenage years are some of the years that I look back on the most, and just try to rationalize why now in my 20s I I deal with things like anxiety, um and at times, being depressed, right? Being depressed. And I think in my teenage years, I felt as if I never really got to experience what it was to truly be myself. And when I did have those moments, I had to, I feel like I felt as if I had to lie. I felt as if I had to be a kind of a rebel, kind of be an asshole. And that really created a division with the relationship of me and my parents, I feel like. Because again, I was lying to them about what I was doing. I really broke their trust. And I feel like, even especially going into my 20s, it was kind of a very much a process for us to really just be happy, content with one another, and just be okay with who we are, and be all right with knowing that it's okay that, the trajectory that you thought I was going to go in was not the trajectory that I went in. I mentioned in the previous episode that I felt as if, especially my dad more than my mom, played a big part in me feeling as if I didn't really get to be who I really wanted to be. And there were a lot of moments where I felt as if, why I felt as I would ask myself, like, why can I not do these things that I want to do? I had a friend who was pretty much was allowed to just do whatever he wanted in terms of his appearance. And wanted to do the same, right? Because in my teenage years, when I was in high school, I was into a very specific scene. If you guys know what a scene kid is, then you guys know. But if you don't know, please Just go on Google, look up Scene Kid, go on Google Images, and you will know. I will say though, just to cover my ass a little bit, not that I'm ashamed of anything or whatever I did. There were a couple instances where I knew I went over the top with it, but the most craziest thing that I feel like I did was we wore studded belts. And I remember for a bit there for a couple weeks I was wearing two studded belts for no fucking reason. And of course I had the long straight hair naturally. I never straightened my hair. I never fried my hair. I was into skinny jeans and just Vans and being having a ton of bracelets, and I was very much into that scene, right? But even though I was dressing that way, I could tell that that is not what my dad would really want me to dress. And I say that because there were specific moments where I remember specifically one moment where we went to like a family wedding and it was on his side, and I the entire time he kept telling me, we got to go to the haircut place, we got to go to the barber so you could cut your hair short. And at the time, I had the bangs, I had my hair growing out in the back as well. And I was just like, no, what are you talking about? We don't have any time, and plus I don't want to cut my hair. I don't want my hair short. And he would like I felt like he would belittle me at times, just say things that he I felt like as he wasn't thinking about what he was saying, and he would pay no mind to what he actually said. And I feel like in the moment I just didn't know how to process some of those things that he was telling me. But now that I look back at it, why would you tell that to your own son, type of thing, right? And I'm not gonna say what he's told me, but it was the thing that there was only one moment prior to that where I remember telling him on the spot, why are you telling me this? Why are you telling your own son this, right? And so I felt as if because my mom, I want to say my mom, she just wanted me to be happy. My mom was very much the type of person that she just liked seeing me happy. And not that my dad didn't, but I felt like my mom, more than I felt like anyone at the moment, was just more supportive than I had she had any reason to be towards me, especially at certain points. She would go to the mall, she would go to Hot Topic, she would call me, she would call the house, and she would tell me, hey, I'm seeing these two shirts, I remember you liking this band, which one do you want? And she would do small things like that. She would take me shopping, and she wouldn't force me to go to Aeropostale or fucking Hollister. She knew she would ask me like, hey, do you want to go to Zoomies? Do you want to go to Hot Topic? And in the moment I didn't really like, it's, to me it was just my mom being my mom. But I think back at those things, and I it's hard for me to not get emotional, and I'm getting emotional now just thinking about it. I haven't thought about that in such a long time, and I feel so fucking blessed to have the mom that I have. But again, I think I took advantage of that in moments where I feel like she didn't deserve it. My dad and my mom, I feel like they had their problems, of course. I think at moments, I never questioned the fact that they loved each other. But I think at moments, what I did think was, why are these two together? I feel like when I was in my teenage years, there were a lot of instances where it wasn't uncommon for me and my little sister to be in my room, and we would just be playing PlayStation to drown out the fact that our parents were arguing in the next in down the hall. You know, there was moments where, you know, not really even thinking about it too much, but thinking about it now, I was just being a big brother to my little sister. We would always, roast each other, me and my little sister. We didn't say eye to eye a lot. We were like the cartoon big brother and sister, where we just kind of, it looks like we hated each other, but there we had our moments where we just like, we were inseparable. But in situations like that, you could not. It would be very much the thing where we were in the room together playing some sort of video game because we just wanted to drown out the fact that our parents were arguing, and that seemed to happen quite a bit. Honestly, quite a bit. My dad is a workaholic, I feel like. And if he's not a workaholic, then he definitely does not like to leave people hanging. If he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it for you. He's going to make good on his word. And with the type of job that he has, he knows a lot of people. And it meant that he worked very long hours, leave very early in the morning, sometimes even before I went to school. And he would come back home at what seemed like until the very last minute of the day, right? 8 p.m., 9 p.m. If it was in season, sometimes nearing 10 p.m., right? And I can understand that for someone who works those amount of hours, when you get home, you don't really want to do anything other than maybe eat and then just go to bed. And for me, I feel like when my dad would come home, sometimes I feel like the only interaction that I would have with him was to help him take off his boots and just go back to my room. I didn't really speak a whole lot with my dad. I feel like even it really affected the way that I approach conversations with my dad, because when I started to work and when I started to, we started talking about me going to college and whatnot, I feel like that was literally the only times we would talk, is talk about, if it wasn't about my job, it was about when I was going to start going to school, and there was no in between. Very rarely was there an in between, right? When I was in when my teenage years, I felt as if the only real times when I would really talk with my dad, have a conversation, was nothing of supplement, with substance. And I really felt like I craved that so much. But when you are growing up in that environment and that's just kind of the norm, it just became that. It became the norm for me. It wasn't something that I questioned until very certain moments. But for me, it was just the norm. The only real time where I feel like I brought it up to my mom was I had gone into an argument with my dad. I felt like I think I remember going off on my dad about a certain thing. And my mom came into my room and she started questioning what I wanted to do with my life. And in the moment, I just remember telling her that I wanted to be a rock star, just because I was into the music. I was so into music that was what heavily influenced all the things that I wanted to do and the things that I would do, right? And she went on to tell me that that wasn't something feasible, that wasn't realistic, that I would never achieve that, essentially. And I just remember having a moment of silence where we didn't say anything, and I just told her that I felt as if my dad was never there for me, because I felt like that at certain points. I felt like that in certain situations. I felt like my dad was never there for me. And it sucks. It really sucks to say that, right? Because as much as my dad put on the line to give us the life that we had, I still felt that way, right? And I feel like it's okay for me to feel that way. It's okay for someone to feel that way, because you being a parent doesn't supplement everything. You know what I mean? You doing the bare minimum of being a parent is your job, is what you're supposed to do. It doesn't mean that that your kids owe you anything, right? That's just what you're supposed to fucking do when you bring someone into this world, is just at least do the bare minimum, right? But it really, the trajectory again was very different in the trajectory that my parents really wanted me to go down. And that trajectory for them was, you know, going to school, going to college. If I didn't do that, I was going to be a failure. If I didn't get a traditional job, I was going to be a failure, right? Everything, this social media, YouTube, and all this shit was pretty much non-existent. And everything else that wasn't traditional, I was just not, it wasn't going to cut it, right? Being a teenager for me is when I started to rebel. I started to really get into friendships that were really, at the end of the day, no good for me. I started smoking weed. I would literally want to. That's literally all I wanted to do. And again, the thing that I said earlier, where I would lie to my parents, I would lie to them and say that I needed money to, you know, just because I wanted to get a drink when I was out skating. But in reality, I was pitching in for a 5 sack, a 10 sack of weed, and it became the routine. And my parents weren't dumb. They're not stupid people. They're not oblivious to what is actually going on, you know, because again, I would come home at the end of the day and I would smell a certain way. I would look a certain way. And it was very obvious, right? My dad grew up again in a household where he wasn't an only son, he had brothers. And one of his brothers, one of my uncles, ended up becoming a drug addict. And over on my mom's side, may my uncles rest in peace, but one of my uncles was an alcoholic and one of them was a drug addict. And it was very easy for my dad to want the opposite because he very much had to experience growing up with a brother that was under the influence pretty much like 90% of the time, right? And so did my mom, right? And I could understand the paranoia and not wanting that, and just, you know, anything that is considered a drug is taboo and they wanted nothing to do with them. I was able to get away for it for a while, but through one friendship, and I guess I'll go into the story because it's a funny, to me it's a funny story, but it's like a little bit of lore that I still bring up, my friend, my best friend still brings up. But I was on a hot streak of not getting caught, or, you know, maybe my parents were suspicious, but they didn't have any solid evidence to put me on trial essentially, right? But in high school, I built a relationship with a dude who was my age. He was in the same grade as me, but he, for whatever reason, looked up to me a lot. He was just super down to do whatever it was that I wanted to do. He was just super down to come over and just hang out and spend all day with me and help me do whatever it was that I wanted to do, right? He was just a homie, like a big homie or so I thought. One day, one weekend, you know, we get out of high school, we finish school, we get out of school, and we had already planned to for him to spend the night, maybe even spend the weekend at my house, right? And how we were going to spend our Friday was we had just picked up a big bag of that good weed of that good weed. We walked home, we were talking about it the entire time. We get home, we leave our stuff, and we decide, hey, let's go to the grocery store and get some snacks to have for the rest of the night. And, you know, because we're going to get hungry, because we're going to get the munchies or whatever. We go on about our way. We go through an alley, we stop, we smoke, and we go to the grocery store. And so we go into the grocery store and I say, hey, I want to go over here. If you want to go on your own, let's just meet up here by the cash registers, and we'll pay and then we'll go back home. So I go get my stuff. I go back to the cash registers and I'm waiting for like 15 minutes and I do not see him anywhere. And I'm literally just, I'm able to spot every single cash register and I just do not see this dude. So in my head, I'm like, okay, he probably did the same thing. For whatever reason, we didn't see each other. He paid for his shit and he's out in the front looking for me and waiting for me, right? So I pay for my stuff and I go to the front and I don't see him. And again, it's not like a big grocery store or anything. It's not like a fucking Walmart. But again, I go out to the front and I don't see him. So again, I'm waiting there in the front for like 20 minutes and he just does not come out. And I'm like oblivious. I'm not thinking that he ditched me or anything. I just think that maybe, again, we didn't see each other. He waited out in the front for whatever reason. We didn't see each other again. And he decided that to just go back to my house because, again, we're going to meet up there anyways. So I walk back home. I don't see him on the way back home. I get to my house, he's not there, but his things are still at my house. So I'm like, what the fuck happened to this dude when we went to the grocery store? But instead of going back for him or looking for him, I'm just a little bit of an asshole and I just stay home, right? I'm a little high. Of course, I'm not going to tell my mom when I'm high to go take me to the grocery store to look for this other dude who's high as fuck too. And so I'm waiting for him at my house. A couple hours go by and he comes back, right? But instead of just us, going through with our plan, he said, "Hey, I'm actually going to go back home." And I'm like, "Okay, that's a little bit weird, but whatever, I guess." So I'm a little bummed out, but he goes back home. A couple hours go by and nothing it looks like it's just going to be the end of the day as normal. But a couple hours go by and then the doorbell rings. And I don't immediately answer. My mom's in the kitchen. She goes and answers it. And all of a sudden I start hearing people arguing. I start hearing a voice that I've never heard before, just like yelling at my mom, like telling my mom a bunch of shit. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? And I go out and I get a glimpse of who it is. And sure enough, behind this lady is this fucking dude, the dude who I thought was my friend. And immediately I knew something was up. And I rushed to my room. I opened up my drawer and I had an apple that we used to smoke the weed out of, right? And yes, a fucking apple. It was a common thing. People still fucking use those apples when in need, right? And so I got the apple. I went to my backyard and I fucking threw it behind into our backyard, into the park, which was behind our house, to get rid of the evidence because I knew shit was about to go down. So I go back into my room, and my mom comes in and she's fucking furious. Not because of what this lady was telling her, but because that a lady had the fucking audacity to come to our house and start telling my mom a bunch of shit. A lady that my mom has never ever met, right? So you're probably wondering, what did this lady tell my mom, right? Why was my friend there? Why was his mom there? What happened, right? So to break it down, my mom came in to my room and she said, "So basically, your friend's mom came to the house to tell me that you guys smoked, that you peer pressured him into smoking, that you forced him to smoke, and that his aunt had to take him home because he was so high and he didn't know what to do. So this fucker blamed me because he couldn't handle his fucking high." And so of course, he went rogue and he immediately blamed me for getting caught being high. And so his aunt had taken him home. He told his mom, and then his mom went over to my parents' house and to tell my mom a bunch of shit. My mom was able to calm her down, to tell her off, and she did it by telling her that I didn't smoke. She defended me without actually knowing the truth. And so my mom goes into her room and she tells my dad. They come back into my room and they tell me, "Look, we've kind of noticed that you've been acting weird. And now this whole thing happens and we need to figure out what is going on. Are you actually smoking weed?" And I tell them, "No, I don't know what you're talking about. I have never smoked weed." And my dad searches my room and he goes through literally everything and he is not able to find anything because, again, I got rid of the evidence while all that shit was going down. So my dad says, "Okay, that's fine. We'll believe you for now, but just know that I am going to take you tomorrow to go get a drug test done." And so they leave, and immediately I'm left with two options: continue to lie and make it worse for myself, or just be real with my parents and tell them that I smoked. So like 30 minutes go by, and then I call them back into my room and I tell them that I smoked weed. And I didn't get yelled at. I got a pretty stern lecture from by my dad, and of course, he brought up his brothers. He brought up my mom's brothers as well. And the next thing that he did actually baffled me, and it fucked me over for like a month. Instead of just grounding me and taking away my PlayStation, which was my most prized possession at the time, he didn't do that. He took away my fucking bedroom door for a month. For a fucking month, he took away my bedroom door. And let me break it down for you how fucked that was for me. In the night, I like to sleep with my door closed. I don't like to look at a fucking dark hallway. It was so scary to me. I was already full of creepy pasta imagery in my day-to-day life because that's what I was into at the time. I was into the fucking creepy pastas. So I had to look at a fucking dark ass hallway with no door. My room is, when you go into the hallway in my parents' room, my door was literally the first door that you fucking have to pass by. If you need to access the bathroom, you needed to pass my room. And I couldn't be shirtless, I couldn't be fucking naked changing or anything, because again, I was exposed to anybody that would walk by. So I had to literally do my business in the bathroom, even if I had to just simply change in the at the beginning of the day before school. So that was pretty fucked up. But again, it sent my life into a trajectory of my parents just not really trusting me a whole lot anymore. Because even after that, I was only grounded for, I want to say, a month and a half. And then I just immediately got grounded after that because, again, I went back to the typical shit that I was doing and just lying to my parents about where I was, with who I was. And they had already had a list of people who they did not want me to hang out with. I had a specific friend who I would constantly go out with because he would get us in situations that are literally side quests in like a fucking GTA. We would go into some random stranger's car and we would meet up with random people only to fucking skate somewhere just to pick up a fucking 5 sack of weed. We would do shit like that. And again, he was just, when you think of a stoner, he was literally the word. He embodied what it meant to be a stoner. He would show up to my house at times unprompted. Sometimes he would just walk in. My mom had like this sort of, I want to say, sympathy for him because he very much came from a broken home himself, and he found some sort of comfort in my home because he he admitted to me that it felt like he never got the chance to live the life that I lived. He told me that my home felt more of a home to him than his actual home did. And that shit, hearing that from someone who, you don't get to hear him open up a whole lot, was very fucking eye opening to me, honestly. Like, it was wild, right? It was wild to hear him say something like that. But again, I was just a constant liar to my parents because I knew that whatever I was that I wanted to be doing, they would just not be okay with it. And it came to a breaking point to where I got caught again. I got caught smoking again. And my dad told me that he didn't want me in the house anymore. And at the time, I was already going out with my now wife, and I had nowhere else to go but her house, right? And it escalated to the point where I just packed up my things and I went to her house for a couple hours actually. And then I went home. My now mother-in-law, she didn't actually tell me anything. My mom had called her hysterically, telling her that she just wanted me back home and whatnot. And she told me that if I felt comfortable here, that I could stay for a while, obviously. And I remember going back home to my dad because when he caught me in one of the worst ways possible, essentially. And that's another story for another time. But he caught me again with the person that he already didn't like, and he was very vocal about that dude that I was hanging out with, and he just didn't want me to hang out with him, and he caught me with him, right, smoking weed. And to him, just to make it more clear, to him, the idea of me smoking weed was quite literally the worst thing that I could ever fucking do. That it was a gateway for me to get into other drugs. And even though I would tell him that I would not ever do anything else, and I knew that I would never have the balls to do anything else, he just didn't care because again he had to already experience his brother and to be around my uncles on my mom's side. And so when he caught me, he still had to take me to school because he caught me before school started. He drove me to school. And I told him some very deep and personal things. I went off on him. I told him some very horrible things, but it was things that I had experienced, right? Experienced through living just at home. And I went home and I apologized for telling him those things. But now that I think about it, it wasn't things that it wasn't anything that I lied about. It wasn't anything that I made up on the spot just to tell him something horrible. It was legitimate experiences that I went through that were never talked about or justified, right? And that's the thing. When it comes to anxiety for me, a lot of I feel like a big part of that for me were came from things that I experienced as a teenager, right? Being coped up in my room at times, being anxious to talk to family because I was kind of very much an outlier when it came to my family. I again being coped up in my room with my little sister when we would hear our parents arguing down the hall in their room, and just having that anxiousness of potentially them coming out and being angry at us, right? And that played into what it to me what I know as anxiety now. And I don't think about it like that too much. I don't credit it or align the dots like that too much. I always think about when I moved to LA and how horrible it was, and I want to talk about that later. But being a teenager for me were was just a trial of trying to figure out who I was. And going through all of that played into the early parts of what would become my marriage, right? When I started going out with my now wife, I knew that she was the person that I wanted to be with for forever. I fell in love with her like literally the first time I hung out with her. And it sounds cheesy. It sounds like something that happens in a movie, you fall in love day one, but it got so bad. Like I was so confused by the concept of me falling in love legitimately on the first day that I remember going on Facebook and asking for help from literally anybody, right? But I knew that I couldn't, like, obviously tell her that I loved her day one because I didn't want to ruin it, right? She's gone through some of her own relationships. I had gone through my own relationships, and I hope to talk about my relationships previously and do a full deep dive on my marriage because I definitely do want to do that, and I will. But I learned, I feel like some of those aspects of what I picked up on through my dad, like his temper. My dad had the tendency of just having a very short temper and being very loud and vocal when he was in an argument with my mom. And I remember getting into disagreements with my girlfriend, and when we were married, that I could see that like influence of my dad come out, and I would become scared of myself. It never got into anything physical, of course, or anything like that. I would never do that. I don't think I have it in me to ever do that. But just raising my voice when I'm very soft spoken. I feel like I'm not loud. I'm not anything like that. But it would only happen when I would get mad. I had a short temper when I would get mad or frustrated. I didn't understand what it meant for me to be, I guess, understanding of someone else's feelings. And just I had to learn, like I legitimately had to learn and tell myself that I do not want to become my dad because I very much don't want to be him. The way that I feel like at times the interactions that my dad has with my mom to me are baffling, honestly. are baffling because I could never do that with my wife. I could never, speak to my wife a certain way, especially in very inappropriate times. I could never do that. And I did not want to become that. So I had to teach myself not to be that, because I was never like sat down and told what it was to be in a relationship. I never had that conversation with my dad. A lot of conversations I never had with my dad, what it meant to essentially grow up a male, what it was to be a man, essentially, right? I had to just figure out things on my own. And again, he was my father figure, but I very much did not want to become him. I respected his worth ethic, and I thank him for bringing us and giving us the sort of lifestyle that he worked for to give us to us, right? But I did not want to become him. I don't want to be him. And I had to learn patience. I had to learn what it meant to be just considerate of your partner, and be understanding that it's not it's got to be fair and even, essentially. You have to be able to listen and understand that not everything needs to be a fucking argument. And I take pride in the way that I interact with my wife. I take pride in how I express my love to her, because I never want her to feel as if she is not loved, because I don't want it to be a thing where I know that I love her but I don't tell her that. I let her know every fucking day how much I love her. And I felt as if that was very much not the case in my household. Growing up as a teenager for me was about just taking what I had, taking those opportunities that I did have to really express myself, and just run with it, essentially. And I really needed to figure out that I can't just lie all the time, right? I was a horrible liar to my parents. And I really needed to work on that. I really just felt as if the relationship with my parents for a while was just so fucked. And it really took me, developing as a person to really, really just bring that back, because it's not like I don't want to have a good relationship with my parents. I longed for that, right? I really wanted that as a teenager. And so I feel as if, even still though, even if we live in the same town, sometimes when I go to their house, it just doesn't feel like home. I feel like, and I guess it makes sense because I don't live there. I haven't lived there in a couple of years now. But at one point, that was my home. That was where I felt comfortable. And it's not like I don't feel comfortable there. I don't want to make it seem like it's horrible or anything like that. It's not. But I very much have my point of, okay, I want to go home now. I want to go home now. I know I know there's people that go to their parents' house and that's where they feel the most comfortable in. And, they feel like if they could just easily move in there at any point. But trust me, I have my days where I do go and I just want to be back home at a certain point, right? And I love talking to my mom. I feel like now our relationship is much better. And when it comes to birthdays, Mother's Day, more so Mother's Day and like Father's Days, I like giving them cards, and I like to write personal notes in there. And I always say, I understand that I was not the best, that our relationship was not the best as a teenager or whatever, but I always want them to understand that regardless of it all, I very much still love them, right? Because again, my mom, she just wanted what's best for me. She just wanted me to be happy. My mom grew with a pretty big family, broken home, and she just wanted me to be happy. I know that my dad does too, but there are just certain things that maybe he just doesn't understand, that I maybe don't really want to help him understand, because I'm afraid that he's just not at the end of the day. I hope that if you are in a situation where you feel like if you're stuck, if you feel as if you can't find your way out, I legitimately want you to understand that there is a way out, that there is essentially the light at the end of the tunnel. And I know some people don't want to hear that, or that it's just so cheesy to say that, but it legitimately is. It legitimately is true. I think that if I would have just gave in and just allowed myself to succumb to my thoughts or whatever, that things would have played out a very, very different. But I'm thankful that I decided to want to better myself, because it's not easy. It's not fucking easy. And I don't think that it ever will be extremely easy. As much as we really need those moments where we just want things to be easy, even for a fucking just day or a couple of hours. But sometimes we just have to understand that we are doing ourselves a big favor every day by simply just existing. And I feel as if in my teenage years, I was just existing. When I mentioned earlier, maybe I didn't mention it, but a lot of my teenage years felt as if I was just on autopilot. I feel like you gain consciousness when you're super young, but I feel like I had to gain consciousness twice in my life, because I just even I'm 28. I'm gonna be 28 this year. I'm 27 now, but I feel like as if I'm a completely different person, and I'm thankful that I am. I look back on being a teenager with certain instances of just core memories, for the good or for bad, but it's what shaped me into who I am today. And I'm thankful that I'm able to analyze those situations and just be understanding that it, even if it was fucked up, it played into the person that I am today. You know, dealing with anxiety and coming to terms with that, and some of the things that I do, as fidgety as I am right now, this entire time I've been like, doing the thing where I like I'm bouncing my foot up and down. I have a thing for, this fucking like Vicks thing. It has a label. I take them off, and it plays into shit like that. And it's just who I am, right? At the end of the fucking day, it's who I am. And I have to embrace who I am, because I am stuck with this until I, my last breath is exhaled, my final words are said. But for now, I have to be accepting of who I am, because I do not want to go back to being miserable. I do not want to go back to not knowing what it was to love myself, right? Because now more than ever, I feel like I really love myself, even though there are a couple things that I would like to do for myself to really, really be comfortable with myself and really love myself. I still very much love myself, right? And as a teenager, I felt like I didn't. As a teenager, I don't think I did, right? As much of a front I put up as this cool dude, as this easygoing dude, I I was not happy with myself, right? I wasn't happy with myself, and I did a bunch of shit just to try to put up this fake persona when I was fucking miserable doing so, right? I got accepted for a bit, but it didn't do me any favors in the long run. And I mentioned it last episode, but I have a fucking mullet. I have a fucking mullet, and that's just through me, allowing myself to do new things. I'm wearing jewelry, you can see here, and I love jewelry now. I love dyeing my hair. I love video games. I love anime. I love, you know, things that involve technology, keyboards, computers. I love gaming. And those are the things that make me Alex, right? Not this superficial and these other things, right? I am not that person anymore. I am not the certain experience that I went through that scarred me when I was a teenager. I am a fucking Alex. And that is who I am. And that is who I want to continue to be. I want to thank you once again for coming along for another episode. I really hope to see you next time. Hopefully, it will be with my best friend, and hopefully, we could get into some of those things that we did as teenagers. Because we got up into a lot of shit. I only covered what it was like my home life, and I mentioned that I would go out a lot, that I would go skating, and a lot of those experiences happened with him, with my best friend. So hopefully, I could have him on next time. So I really look forward to that, and I really look forward to having those conversations for you guys. But thank you once again for being here for episode 2 of Whatever Forever. This has been 11. This has been Alex. You guys matter. You guys are amazing. You guys are beautiful. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise, because I will square the fuck up and knock some sense into them, because you are very much worth it. And if you haven't already, take some time to do something for yourself, whether it be go out to eat one of your favorite foods, buy yourself that one thing you've been contemplating on buying. Do that one thing for yourself. Take some time for you, and solely you, not for anybody else, but do something for yourself. Okay? Thank you very much. We'll see you on episode 3. Take care. Have yourselves a damn good one. We'll see you on the next one. Bye. That is my outro. I'm a fucking YouTuber at the end of the day, so that's my fucking outro. Bye.